The history is filled with the horrifying cases of Pyscho-maniacs, Ted Bundy, Gein, Jeffry Dahmer, to name a few. These people with low empathy knew no limits and went overboard with their evil doings. They would indulge in cannibalism, necrophilia, sexual assault, and even sever their victims' body parts to keep as a souvenir. All of them had one attribute in common: they knew what they were doing and showed no remorse, rather enjoyed inflicting pain on their victims. The film industry has dramatized the life of many serial killers for public awareness. Some famous movies are The Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, and Ted Bundy Tapes that received huge public appreciation. Welcome back to another episode of Epiz Scary, bringing you the best spooky content on the internet. If you love unsolved mysteries, freaky videos, ghosts, and the paranormal as much as we do, then this is the place for you. Subscribe to the channel now so you never miss any of our fantastically freaky uploads as soon as they're available. Let's get into today's episode. Dr. Death. Dr. Harold Shipman was a British physician who became notoriously known as Dr. Death when he was arrested for the murder of more than 200 people. He was a married man and had a family of 5. No one could have thought a man with such a regular life could commit such heinous acts while being a doctor. Shipman never got along with his doctor colleagues as they did not like his overconfident and arrogant behavior. In 1972, Shipman started practicing medicine. He killed around 71 of his patients while working as a junior doctor at Donnybrook practice. His target was old women. However, he also killed a lot of men. In the 1980s, Dr. Shipman became a general practitioner, and the number of murders doubled. He killed 215 patients while working as a GP in Hyde. In 1993, he established his clinic at 21 Market Street and continued killing people. In 1998, Shipman killed his final victim, Mrs. Grundy. The daughter of the last victim, Kathleen Grundy, refused to cremate her mother and pressed charges against Shipman for not only killing her mother but also trying to tamper with Mrs. Grundy's will. The victim's body was sent for an autopsy that revealed Dr. Shipman had injected her with pharmaceutical-grade heroin called dimorphine and killed her. Shipman was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. On January 13, 2004, Shipman committed suicide by hanging himself in a cell. He never confessed to any of his crimes. Dr. H. Holmes and his murder castle. Henry Howard Holmes started his career by scamming insurance companies. In 1886, Holmes moved to Chicago City and switched his career. He adopted the name Dr. H. Holmes and started working as a pharmacist. During his practice as a pharmacist, Holmes began to kill people for their properties. He built a 3-story inn that he referred to as his murder castle. The murder castle was a torture cell that was fully equipped with gas lines, trapdoors, and soundproof rooms. It was a maze that no victim could escape. He had installed a surgical table and a medieval rack in his basement to torture his victims. Holmes's primary victims were women. He would lure young women into his murder castle, where he would suffocate and kill them with poisonous gas. After killing the victims, he would cut them open, cremate them in the burner, or sometimes skin them and sell their skeletons to medical schools. On November 17, 1894, Holmes was arrested when his co-conspirator informed the police about his malpractice because he failed to deliver money. The police charged Holmes for 4 murders. However, Holmes confessed to killing 27 people. It is believed that Holmes killed more than 200 people. In 1896, Dr. Holmes was hanged to death. Jack the Ripper. In 1888, an unknown killer haunted the Whitechapel district of London. The main target of the killer was prostitutes. He lured prostitutes to join him and later killed them brutally. The killer would mutilate the bodies of these women by slitting their throats with a carving knife. The serial killer became notoriously known as Jack the Ripper, as he would throw cut-open bodies on the streets. A media frenzy broke out when 5 such mutilated bodies were found butchered in the downtrodden East End district. The police were all around the city looking for the psychopath while this madman sent taunting mails to police and told them how he lured and killed his victims. The Ripper killed his last victim in September and suddenly disappeared. Jack killed approximately 100 people over 6 months. No one knows to this date who was the actual Jack the Ripper. However, it is a popular belief that he might have been a butcher or surgeon, given his surgical accuracy on his victims. Butcher of Rostov. In 1978, Andrei Chikatilo started a murder spree in Rostov, Russia. His target victims were young women and children. Andrei would kidnap these women and children and later murder them brutally by slitting their throats. In later years, he admitted to the police that stabbing women helped him reach orgasm, and he could not stop it. Andrei was named the Butcher of Rostov and the Rostov Ripper. In 1984, the police arrested Andrei after seeing him molest a girl. Andre confessed under custody to having raped and killed 56 women and children. He was convicted of 53 murders and sentenced to death. In 1994, Andre was executed by the firing squad. Ted Bundy. Theodore Bundy, known as Ted Bundy, killed 36 women during his lifetime. Ted was a handsome-looking, well-educated man who went from state to state on a killing spree. Looking at Bundy's profile, it's hard to believe that a man like him could kill women in such a brutal. Bundy belonged to a broken family. Bundy never knew who his birth father was. He grew up believing that his grandmother was his mother while his mother was his sister. A tough childhood took a toll on Ted's mental health and is believed to have triggered his psychopathic conduct. Ted Bundy started his murderous rampage in 1974 when many women went missing in Seattle. In 1996, Bundy graduated from the University of Washington and moved to Utah. He lured young women by acting as if he needed help and killed them brutally after raping them. Later, Bundy moved to Colorado, where he continued his killing spree. Bundy's last victim was a 12-year-old in Florida. He killed the minor by drowning her and raped her later. Finally, in 1975, Bundy was arrested on suspicion of burglary. On investigation, police was shocked to know that the burglar was instead a serial killer. He was charged with rape and murder and sentenced to death. On January 24, 1989, Bundy was executed in an electric chair at Florida State Prison. The Killer Clown. John Wayne Gacy was a sex offender and serial killer who regularly performed at children's hospital and children's parties as a clown. He was infamously known as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown. Gacy would lure young boys and kidnap them. He brutally killed his victims and then raped them. In 1978, Gacy grabbed the attention of the police when a 15-year-old boy went missing who was last seen with Gacy. Police raided his home and found 29 decomposing bodies of young children. Gacy was convicted of 33 murders and sentenced to death. In 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, the Milwaukee Monster. Jeffrey Dahmer, better known as the Milwaukee Monster, brutally killed 17 men in Ohio, Wisconsin. Dahmer belonged to a typical family with a good childhood. However, he turned out to be a horrendous serial killer. Dahmer was unstable in his career. He dropped out of college and later the army. During these years he molested, raped, and killed many fellow men. He would lure men for beer and money and later kill them viciously, dismember them, and even inject acid in the victim's brain to keep them in a zombie-like state. Dahmer severed parts of his victims and made a collection. He had a particular interest in men of color and ethnic races. In 1991, one of Dahmer's victims escaped and called the police on him. The police arrested Dahmer with charges of murder and sentenced him to more than 900 years. In 1994, a cell inmate murdered Dahmer out of disgust. Ed Gein. The horrific crimes of Ed Gein fueled many movie makers to produce movies like Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ed Gein grew up in a terrible household where his alcoholic father regularly abused him. Over 5 years, Gein's family died one by one. Gein's mother had instilled hatred in Gein against women and sex. After the death of Ed Gein's mother, he started his killing spree. Ed picked women from local bars and brought them home to murder them. He would dismember his victims and make household items out of them, including vests, cups, and cooking utensils. In 1957, Ed Gein was caught by police when a hardware store owner went missing who was last seen with Gein. Gein was convicted of 11 murders. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and considered unfit for trial. Gein spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital until he died in 1984, the Boogeyman. Better known as the Boogeyman, Albert Fish was convicted of murdering, dismembering, and raping 3 children. However, Fish confessed to killing more than 100 children. He sent a disturbing letter to one of his victims' families describing how he kidnapped, raped, murdered, and dismembered the 10-year-old Grace Budd. Fish was a sadistic person who was obsessed with cannibalism. In 1934, Albert Fish was apprehended and convicted of Grace Budd's murder. Albert Fish was sentenced to death and executed by the electric chair on January 16, 1936. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos was a notorious serial killer who inspired the movie Monster. Wuornos belonged to a broken family. She was sexually abused as a child and dealt with a tough childhood. Aileen started working as a sex worker in her adulthood. She lured men on the highway bridge and killed them, followed by looting them. In 1992, Aileen was convicted of 7 murders and sentenced to death. She was executed by administering a lethal injection on October 9, 2002. That brings us to the end of this video all about the 10 most notorious serial killers of all time. Which of the serial killers in today's video would you least like to bump into down a dark alley? Get involved, and let us know in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a thumbs up. Plus, if you want to see more awesome scary content just like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get notified as soon as we upload a new video. As always, thanks for stopping by. See you again soon in the next one.